record. Okay. Gotta unblank this. Good. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I told them to leave early. I teach 2 sections of this class back to back, and there are only 2 people last time. I guess we only have 3 here. So this is what happens when it's Super Bowl Monday and it's cold and icy. So yeah, hi everybody. Welcome to class. How's the weekend? Huh? Same as any other day? Yeah, I had to think to myself, wait, was it the weekend? All these days do kind of blend together. Although there was the Super Bowl, right? That is sort of a weird American holiday. You didn't even know, Kevin. Well, you missed out on a mediocre game. No, it was fine. I don't know. Old man Brady won. Were you guys? That's what people say. Yeah, it's like more Super Bowls than like anybody than entire franchises and stuff. So that's sort of a big deal. But I feel like you gotta root for the young guy, right? I feel like Brady represents like all the old people of America who refuse to retire and don't open up new spots for all the young people, even though he's still winning. There's something about him that I feel like people resent. Anybody have thoughts on the Super Bowl? Anybody in chat land want to talk about it? Super Bowl? Question mark. So in any case, in addition to enjoying the Super Bowl, I also did a ton of grading this weekend, where I read all of your forum posts. I emailed you guys with general feedback, and most of the essays kind of fit into those categories I described, where it's basically like, the task was to pick a song, think about it in conversation with Smith, right? Interpret it as scripture. We went over the instructions actually a couple times in class. It was a little bit of a confusing assignment when you heard about it, but my hope is when you actually did it, it wasn't so bad. What do you guys think? Does anybody want to reflect on their experience? Was it hard? Was it easy? Was it interesting? Was it boring? Kristen? Yeah, that's the thing, right? You talk about it in an abstract way. It's like, oh, this is very complicated, right? But once you sit down and do it, it's actually not so bad, right? So, yeah, so hopefully it wasn't such a bad exercise. My hope, too, is that it was actually maybe sort of interesting. Did anybody think it was interesting? Anybody in the chat have fun writing about the love songs? So in any case, if you couldn't tell from the email, your grades are up on Moodle. You can go, there's a menu up here. There's like a hamburger menu that you can bring down. And then there's like a button that says grades. You go to grades. You can see all of your grades from the semester. One thing, though, is you won't be able to see your final grades there. Okay, just instead, it was interesting. Very good. You won't be able to see your final grades there because things are weighted a little differently. Like the exam will count more than this writing assignment, for example. So the final grade calculation will not be accurate, but everything else will be there. And what else did I want to talk about? For feedback, right? I gave you the general feedback about how if you followed all the directions and had some kind of interesting interpretation, then you got full points. And going forward, if you ever want more specific feedback, especially, I find this is the best way to do it is to talk before you write something. This was more kind of diagnostic, right? It's the beginning of the semester, which is kind of seeing where you're at, making sure we're all on the same page. But going forward, like for the next forum post, if you want to get better, right? If you feel like you weren't really sure what to do, I can help you, right? That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to teach you about religion, but I can also show you how to write. And academic writing is kind of its own special type of writing. So even if you know how to write something else, it's different from writing an essay for an academic class. And I can help you do that. So let me know if you ever want to set up an appointment. Send me an email. I'm happy to correspond over email. We can have an appointment on Zoom. You can come to my Zoom office hours. I have office hours every week. Yeah, just let me know. I'm available. And honestly, this is how I learned how to write, is you got to talk to people, right? So for example, if I'm writing an essay and Kevin is my teacher, I come up to Kevin. I say, Kevin, this is what I want to say, but I'm not exactly sure how to say it. And you can say, well, are you sure that's what you want to say? Have you ever thought about this, this, or this? I'd be like, oh, I've never thought about it that way, right? And it's like, and that part's sort of not clear. Like, what are you really trying to say there, right? And so rather than like fixing all the commas and stuff, learning how to write clearly is really learning how to think clearly. And it's hard to do that without feedback, right? It's hard to do that without kind of a back and forth, like a conversation. And so we could do that over email, but really the best way to do it is these days over Zoom, and in normal days it would be in person. So again, I'm available for consultation, for office hours, for general conversation about writing. Again, that's something I want you to practice in this class, and it's something I want you to be able to take away from this class is learning how to write. So any questions about that? We all good? Okay. Moving on. I guess, yeah, anybody want to share their song? Probably not. I won't shut it down too fast. Anyone want to share? Share about the song? The last class, nobody wanted to, but in any case, why don't we move on to Tevye the Dairyman? This is something I planned for last week, but we ran out of time because we talked about the love songs kind of. It took more time than I expected, but that's okay. This is a story that maybe none of you have read before, but you might know the story, right? So here's an image from a movie based on this story. Has anybody seen this actor before? It's from Fiddler on the Roof. You guys seen Fiddler on the Roof? Heard of it? Nothing? Head nod? Yeah, heard of it? At least heard of it? Okay. Anybody in the chat, Fiddler on the Roof, seen it before? It's very famous. So it was on Broadway starting in the 60s. And actually, right before the pandemic hit, it was still on Broadway, but in Yiddish, I'm pretty sure. Must have been Yiddish, right? I didn't see it, but I saw advertisements for it. So it's a very famous show. If you're into Broadway, you probably know it. Lots of singing and dancing and stuff. And then it was put into film in the 70s, 1971. It's a kind of a classic film. And it's about life in a Jewish community from about 100 years ago. So, and the film, if you know the film, it sounds like maybe some of you have heard of it. The film is based on this story, this and other stories. So this is a collection of short stories. So Tevye the Dairyman is the name of the collection. We just read one chapter. So it's a short story published in Yiddish. Are you guys familiar with this language, Yiddish? Have you heard of Yiddish before? So it's sort of like a colloquial dialect, let's call it a language related to Hebrew, but more kind of a spoken language. Does that make sense? So like, it might be a bit of a foreign concept, but once upon a time, people had like Latin and Greek were these like literary, scholarly languages in Europe, right? But then they spoke Romance languages like French and Spanish and Portuguese and whatever else. Now we've sort of mushed those together and we just write and read in English all the time. But Yiddish was more the spoken language. Hebrew would be more of the written language. And this was true for a lot of Jewish communities in Eastern Europe. So we have this guy, Shalom Aleichem. So he died about 100 years ago. He grew up in Eastern Europe in these Jewish communities. He moved to New York. He wrote these stories. And so he is our author for today. He wrote this story here. And again, people picked it up. They made a film based on it. They made Fiddler on the Roof. And we're going to use it to think about Jewish society from 100 years ago. And also this shift into modernity. Are you guys familiar with this idea of modernity? You guys all modern people? Yeah. It just means modern, exactly. But you know, this question of what does it mean to be modern, right? And so that's something that gets explored here. If you think about, you know, what was happening in Eastern Europe, you know, in 1894 or 1899, whenever these were, I think this one, like maybe the first chapter is 1894. The one we read says 1899 at the end. What's happening in Russia, for example, around this time is the beginnings of revolutions, right? Big wars are being fought. Eventually you get World War I is not too long after this. Big empires that are ruled by like Tsars. Have you ever heard of a Tsar before? Tsar. Also sometimes Czar. Right? This is like the emperor of Russia. So Tsarist Russia would be ruler of Russia at this time. Eventually they become communists and kind of enter into the legacy of Russia today, in the middle of the USSR. So in any case, it's a time of change, right? Where people are moving away from traditional ideas and moving to more modern ideas. And so that's what this story is all about. There are 4 characters in this story, and their names will be hard to remember. They're going to be hard to say, but I ask you to try. The father, and because we're going to talk about this in a minute, so I'm going to introduce these characters. I've got a movie clip from Fiddler on the Roof. We're going to watch that, and I want you to know this story, right? Because again, we're going to dedicate most of this class to it. You have an exam in like a month, right? It's not soon, but this will be on that exam, right? Everything we talk about in class is going to be on the exam. So it is in your best interest to learn these things. So give it a try. Tevye should be pretty easy to say. He's the father of the family, right? He's a Jewish milkman. Tevye the dairyman is the name of the book, right? He's a Jewish milkman living in Eastern Europe. His daughter, this is a hard name to say, is Tsaytl. Again, it's got that same Tsarist, Tsaytl. Why don't I say it and then you guys say it back to me? How does that sound? So, Tsaytl. Yeah, it sounds a lot like title. It's true. So I'll say it first, then you guys say it. Tsaytl. 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 Yeah, good. And then this will be a pretty easy name to remember because it sounds like an English word. Laser wolf, right? You can just think of a wolf with lasers coming out of his eyes. And then slightly harder to say is Matl. It's a lot like Tsaytl. It's got that toll at the end. So Matl. And so these are the 4 characters of the story. There are some other ones too, but we're going to focus on them. And we're going to talk about the main question I have for you is what kinds of love, because remember we came up with a big list of different kinds of love. What kinds of love are depicted in Tevye the Dairyman? Because again, this was the plan from last time to connect with the love conversation, but we can still do it today and it'll still be fine. There's some other ones too, basically like what happens in the story. But let's start with this clip and then we can kind of go from here. Because it's hard to remember all the names, especially if you just read the short story, right? This is one thing I struggle with. I don't know about you guys, but when I read a short story, because it is so short, it's like I'm trying to figure out who's that and what's their deal and what's their relationship, and then the story's over, right? I much prefer a longer novel where I can kind of get invested in the characters. So, it's just the way life is, though. We got a short story. We'll figure it out together. So we're going to watch this clip.
Is a wolf at home?
It's going to be a little hard to understand if you don't remember the reading, but that's okay. There's sort of a joke here. So you're almost supposed to be a little confused at the beginning. It's sort of part of the joke. So I'm just going to throw you guys in and see if you can swim. I think the sound, I got to switch to internal speakers so we can hear it. So hopefully this will work. Let me know if you can't hear things, people in chat. I'll turn the captions on. All right, here we go. Actually, I got to get rid of this stuff.
Is a wolf at home?
He's in the back.
May I?
You guys see?
Hmm?
Good. I try to make it as dark as I can, but it's still not great. And the captions are like automatically made by Google. I think they're not great, but they're better than nothing.
And all this from killing innocent animals.
Don't touch anything.
Well, Tevye, we're here. Well, Well, sit down. Sit down.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a drink.
I won't insult you by saying no.
Well, how goes it with you, Octavian?
How should it go?
You're right.
And you?
The same.
I'm sorry to hear that.
How is your brother-in-law in America?
Oh, he's doing very well.
Oh, he wrote you.
No, not lately.
Then how do you know?
If he was doing badly, he would write.
Hi.
Hi.
Have you?
Yeah.
I suppose you know why I wanted to see you.
Oh, yes, I do, but there is no use talking about it.
Terry, I understand how you feel, but after all, you have a few more without her.
You see, today you want one, tomorrow you may want two.
Two? Well, what would I do with two?
The same as you do with one.
Terry, this is very important to me.
Why is it so important to you?
Frankly, because I'm lonely.
Lonely? Blazer, what are you talking about? How can a little cow keep you company?
Little cow? Is that what you call her?
What else should I call her? That's what she is. Blazer, what are you talking about?
Don't you know?
Of course I know. We are talking about my new milk cow, the one you want to buy from me.
Milk cow? A milk cow, I will be lonely. I'm talking about your daughter. Your daughter, Tsaytl.
My daughter, Tsaytl.
Of course, your daughter, Tsaytl. I see her every Thursday in my butcher shop. And she's made a very good impression on me. A very good impression. Octavia, I like her. Why don't we just shake hands and call it a match? And I'll be good to her. Octavia. I like her. Well, what do you think?
What do I think?
Huh?
I never really liked him. Why should I? You can have a fine conversation with him if you talk about kidneys and livers. On the other hand, not everyone has to be a scholar. And with a butcher, my daughter will surely never know hunger. Maybe I misjudged him. He's a good man. He likes her. And he'll try to make her happy. What do I think? It's a match.
It's a
You
match.
agree? I agree.
You made me a happy man.
Good.
Let's drink on it.
Why not? To you.
No, my friend.
To life. And then they start singing a song called To Life. L'chaim. That's what that means. To life. Okay, so we're back. Hello, everybody. I didn't mean to record that because I might get flagged for copyright, but I guess we'll live life dangerously. So I told you that there was going to be a joke, right? I kind of warned you. What was the joke? You guys get the joke? Christian? Yes, the daughter and the cow, right? And it's an interesting conversation. Let's see, I think I have a picture. Yeah, here's the butcher, Laser Wolf. Here's Tevye, the father. The father thinks Wolf wants the cow. And of course, if you read the reading carefully, that's how it begins, is Laser Wolf wants something, and Tevye's like, I bet he wants my cow. And then he doesn't want to give him the cow. Why doesn't he want to give him the cow? Why doesn't Tevye want to give Laser Wolf the cow? What does he assume that Laser Wolf would do with it? What is Laser Wolf's profession? What's his job? This guy. What is it? He's a butcher. And what do butchers do with cows? Meat, right? Turn them into meat. Now, of course, Tevye, as we talked about before, he's a dairyman. You can even see, I think, his dairy cart where he brings milk around, right? So his job is to sell milk to people, right? To give milk to people. So how would you describe his relationship with cows? What does he do with cows? He milks them. He cares for them, right? He doesn't have to kill them in order to eat, right? In fact, he wants them to be well. He wants to keep them alive. They have more of kind of like a symbiotic relationship, right? Familiar with this concept from biology class? So just from the beginning, they're two professions. They both deal with cows in different ways, actually very different ways, and it kind of leads to a conflict between them. So Tevye comes in thinking, this guy just wants to kill one of my cows. I'm not going to let him, right? And then, of course, Laser Wolf wants to marry his daughter, and it leads to sort of a hilarious miscommunication. But I think, reading a little bit more carefully, like I encourage you to do in this class, there's actually something very meaningful happening here. Maybe something even a commentary about love, right? It's sort of a subtle one, but I encourage you to look for it. So let's go back to this big question. What kinds of love are depicted in Tevye the Dairyman? I'm going to break you all out into groups in a moment. Here are the questions I want you to discuss. So again, a lot of this is not coming from the clip. We're not going to watch the whole movie. A lot of it's coming from the book that we read. If you don't remember all the details, that is fine. It's not an exam, but you can look them up, right? So I encourage you to open up your PDFs and your sources if you haven't already opened them up. So open up to this Alachaim reading. It's called, I've already downloaded it. I encourage you to download stuff before class so you can open it up conveniently. Yeah, Alachaim, Tevye, 35 to 52. So that's what we're looking at here. And as you look at it, these are the things I want you to think about. So why does Tevye want his daughter Tsaytl to marry Laser Wolf? Why does he initially reject Montel? And of course, we haven't met Montel yet. A big challenge of this conversation will be keeping the characters straight, but that's, a part of reading a story in general. Why does he change his mind? And what kinds of love are depicted in Tevye the Dairyman? Scripture, you could talk about it. The section we just watched there doesn't show up, but it does show up in the story. So that's something you can discuss too. So do you have any questions for me before we break out into groups? We all feeling pretty good? Okay, so let's do it. Again, you can just discuss like what are the nuts and bolts of the story, who are the characters, what do they do? But what kinds of love? That's the big takeaway. What kinds of love are depicted in Tevye the Dairyman, just like we talked about the other time. 14 people, let's do 4 groups. That seems like a good number. Okay, so here we go. Zoom recording. Okay, we're getting there. All right, how were your conversations? We recording? Yeah. How are the conversations, guys? Would anybody like to share? Anybody from internet land want to participate? Just a reminder, I think some of these questions get lost when we switch to the breakout rooms, but we were thinking about, you know, what kinds of love are depicted, what's the different relationships between the different characters, role of scripture. If you found anything for that, we could talk about that. But yeah, what did you guys talk about? Did anybody have good conversations, Kristen? Okay. And how does that make her independent? Oh, so it will be a dependent love. I see. So dependent love. So where Tsaytl would depend on the butcher, right? That's true. Good. So there's a dependent kind of love where the butcher, maybe we could say, wants to bring her into that, right? How do you think the butcher feels about her? He's probably not dependent on her, right? What would you say that he loves her? And if yes, then what kind of love is that? How does the butcher feel about the daughter? Laser Wolf feel about Tsaytl? Did somebody just try to talk? No? All right. What do you guys think? What kind of love would that be? Leo, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Would it be like an erotic love? If you want it for like her looks?
Is that what he said? He said, Tevye, your daughter's so sexy. Can I marry her, please? It wasn't quite that straightforward, was it?
No, it was more, I'm very fond of her. Oh, she was a little shy, but I'm fond of her. Something like that.
I'm not sure I'm totally hearing you. I feel like we're having a lot of microphone problems today, but I heard the first part that you said about erotic love. It's almost as emotional. His connection just from seeing her, he hardly knows her. So probably arrange, if I'm making sense. Yeah, it's like an arranged marriage, exactly. Arranged marriage. That's something we talked about in my group too. He said he's become fond of her. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so one thing he said that really made me kind of feel for the guys, he said he's lonely, right? And I feel like particularly in pandemic times, we're living in a lonely time. He's a lonely man. He's a widower. I don't know if we talked about this yet. What does it mean to be a widower? Yeah, his wife died. And so he wants a new wife. It's very simple, right? It's like, all right, my wife is gone. I need a new wife. Frank says this is a love of opportunity. If she marries a butcher, she'll never know hunger, right? Which, and again, if we think this is 100 years ago, society's changing, wars are about to start. Actually, the wars are happening. Russia in particular was involved in various wars with Japan at this time. I'm sure there are other wars happening around this time too. People were starving. People were starving to death. And so to marry someone for food wasn't unheard of, right? In fact, it was kind of common just to marry someone for stability. So yeah, love of opportunity, that makes a lot of sense. He was desperate. He was lonely. Yeah, exactly. Kevin's lolling about it, but I totally agree. I guess I'm lolling about it too. So I think it's pretty clear what he wants. He just wants a wife, maybe not just any wife, but he's not necessarily so crazy about the daughter. Here's Tsaytl in the background here. So that's good. Those are different kinds of love. What about the guy Montel? I told you he's a poor tailor. What's his deal? Did anybody find him in the reading? So here's his picture. He's in the movie. We just didn't see any clips with him. He kind of even looks like a tailor here, right? He's got the hat and the vest that a tailor might wear. What's their deal? Did anybody get to that part? So again, you know, I can threaten you with exams. You know, when it comes to the exam, you're going to want to know who these people are, right? So let's figure it out together. Model. I got some things like this. So on page 48, 49, we have some conversations with Model. So Tevye says, "Are you crazy? Since when can you be the matchmaker, the father-in-law, and the groom all rolled into one? I suppose you want to be the rabbi and the band leader too. I never in all my life heard of a young man making matches for himself." And so again, this is a traditional society where a matchmaker arranges marriages for other people. What's the deal? Why is Tevye asking him if he's crazy? What is he saying to Tevye to make him respond in this way? What, based on even just this quote alone, what do you think Model is telling Tevye? And again, if you don't remember, you can turn to page 48 and look it up and see what's going on there, right? And this is how I would encourage you to study. As you prepare for exams down the road, you can go through these slides, be like, yeah, who is Model? What was his deal? And if you look at the slide, you think, I still don't really know what his deal was. You can turn to page 48, page 49, read those 2 pages, and then you will know, right? So these slides are your key for unlocking the knowledge of this course. Forget the butcher. Oh, he's saying he wants to marry his daughter. Thank you, Leo. I was getting nervous for a second. He wants to marry his daughter. Exactly. And so how does Tevye respond when he says he wants to marry the daughter? Does Tevye want to let Model marry his daughter? Another thing that Tevye says to him, I'm looking at the next page now, page 49. A child like you ought to be spanked. What exactly do you propose to live on after the wedding? The money you'll get from pawning your stomach since you won't be needing them anyway? Or do you plan to feed your wife with matching vests? You can't eat a vest, can you? No, you can't. So what is Tevye's point here? Does he want Model to marry his daughter? No. And why not? He's too poor. Yeah, exactly. He's afraid that his daughter will starve. Now, can you probably tell from this picture? What do you think Tsaytl wants? Tsaytl, that's how they say it. What does Tsaytl want? Yeah, they love each other. So how would you characterize the love of Model and Tsaytl? What kind of love is that? Say again? Romantic love? Yeah. We can put it a few different ways. They're kind of soulmates. They made a vow to each other. They fell in love and they want to marry for love. And of course, that's probably more familiar for all of us. Yeah, maybe even love at first sight. Who knows? This arranged marriage stuff is a little weird for us because, again, we're very modern people. But this was weird for them. At that time, this was very uncommon. And so as we think about what is the story showing, it's a transition from that more arranged marriage sort of society to a more love marriage kind of society. Now, do people get arranged marriages today? Does that still happen? Absolutely. Yeah, it most definitely does. Say it again? In some countries, yeah, and including the United States. There was a Netflix special about it. What was it called? It was about like Indian folks who get arranged marriages. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? I watched it thinking I might use it in class, but I did not prepare any clips from it because we already got this movie. Yeah, so Tsaytl and he love each other. They've been planning to get married a year ago. Exactly. And Tevye is so surprised is because they didn't go through a matchmaker. They kind of promised their love to each other. So in the end, what does Tevye decide? Here they are talking about it, right? What does Tevye decide? Who does he want his daughter to marry? Because he's the father, right? It's patriarchy, as we all know. It's a patriarchal society. What does Tevye decide in the end? He wants her to marry Model. So working honest, so why look down on Model? That's a good point. Yeah, why look down on Model? Yeah, so he does agree to let Tsaytl and Model get married. It's sort of a happy ending in a way, although it's a very sad movie. So if you do watch the movie, a lot of bad things happen too. He'll support the family. Well, he'll do his best. They probably will still be hungry, but they'll do their best. Why does he change his mind? Is it because Model's a good guy? This is actually important. It's not because Model's a good guy. Why does he change his mind? He listens to her. He listens to the daughter, which again, in traditional society might be a little unheard of, right? Laser Wolf is like, just tell them what to do. You don't have to listen to them, right? But as we make this shift into different kinds of love, he's actually listening to his daughter. She comes up to him crying and says, hey, I don't want to marry the butcher. I want to marry this poor tailor. He says, okay, I'll let you marry him. Okay, is that pretty clear? Do you guys feel better about the story now? You have a pretty good sense of who these characters are and everything? It's amazing what happens, you know, when we talk about stuff. You can digest it better. Okay, any questions about all of that? There's one last scene I want to go over. Yeah, and he's thinking about Laser Wolf. There's one last scene I want to go over, which is his wife. So let me open this up. And let me pause it real quick. So before we watch this last scene, I want you to be thinking, his wife, her name's Golda. We didn't talk about her yet. What does she want? And how does he change her mind? Because that's basically the whole point of this dream. If you read the story very carefully, at the end, you can see he's kind of faking this dream. And so I want you to think, what is the point of this dream? What is this dream doing, okay? So we're gonna watch the dream and get rid of all this stuff. Change the settings real quick, share sound, optimize video clip. I guess I'll pause the recording. I guess first of all, we can kind of zoom out. What is the dream trying to do? What is the deal with this dream? What's the point? What's the point of the dream? Let's talk about this for another, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, and then we can switch to Hinduism for the last few minutes of class. What's the deal with the dream, eh? Pros and cons of both men? Okay. That's true. They do talk about the men. They talk about Model. They talk about Laser Wolf. I don't know if you could tell, but the kind of old granny lady, this is the one over here, her name is also Tsaytl. Why do they both have the same name? Exactly. So this is her grandmother, and one more. Yeah. So mom's mom, maybe dad's mom, who knows? But this is her grandmother, and then she named her daughter after this grandmother. So clearly they love her and respect her, right? But she's gone. She's been gone for a long time. They said 30 years, I think. So Tevi's very clever, right? He's pretending like he's having this dream of the grandmother that he knows his wife loves very much. In fact, they named their daughter after her. And then what does the grandmother say? Does she say, marry the butcher? She does not. She says, yeah, marry the tailor. And in fact, it's sort of like this magical thing all of a sudden where the spirits are saying, don't marry the butcher, marry the tailor. But does this work? Does this convince the mother? Yeah, to scare the wife into accepting Model. Exactly, yes. It doesn't work. And so they have to kind of do like a good cop, bad cop thing, right? And then they switch over to the scary ex, or maybe not ex-wife, but just deceased wife, right? And so what does the deceased wife say? The butcher should not marry Tsaytl. Should not. And why not? So it's even in the story. So Reb Tevye, I've always thought you were a learned, honorable Jew. Would you kindly explain to me then how you can let your daughter take over my house, sit in my chairs, carry my keys, walk around in my coats, put on my jewelry, and wear my pants? What's she saying here? This is actually, I'm not going to say a common reason, but it's one reason that things like secondhand clothing shops and that sort of stuff are not popular all over the world. I know they're all the rage here, vintage clothing and that sort of thing. But there's a concern that that stuff is haunted, right? If I die in this coat and then somebody tries to take this coat, I'm going to haunt that person, right? And so moving beyond that, here's an entire house of all of these things that used to belong to this woman, and they knew the woman, they were friends with the woman. And so now their daughter is going to move in and wear her pearls, right? So the rest of the song is her shouting pearls over and over again. And she makes a threat. She threatens that if Tsaytl marries Laser Wolf, she will haunt them and she will kill them, right? She will kill the daughter. And so, of course, this does convince the mom. And, again, there's a happy ending where the two lovebirds can eventually get married. They might be poor, but they make it work. Why do you think Tevye uses this dream? So as Eric said very nicely, it's to scare the wife to accept Model marrying the daughter. Why doesn't he just like explain to his wife, like, hey, our daughter loves this other guy, let's let her marry this other guy? Why doesn't he just take that approach? Why does he have to go through this crazy dream stuff? Because they're poor? Yeah, exactly. Again, especially in like traditional society, maybe you guys already know this, but it doesn't really matter what she wants, right? The mother is thinking, I know, like, let's just imagine she's right here. I know what is best for you. I want you to eat and be healthy and have a long life. And, if you're in love, that's great. If you're not in love, it doesn't matter. You have food to eat, right? You have bread put in your tummy. I know what is best for you. You're marrying the butcher, right? If Tevye tried to explain to her, your daughter doesn't actually really want that, she's not going to care, right? She's the mom. She's the boss of the daughter. She tells the daughter what to do. But now with this kind of new modern society thing, there's a new relationship between people, right? And so he's using superstition and ghosts and all these sorts of things to kind of scare her to let the daughter get what she wants. Maybe one last question for you guys. Bread or love? Which is more important? If you were Tsaytl, which would you prefer? I have my guess about what you will say. But if you had to choose, what would you pick? Is it so bad to marry for bread? Not so bad, right? Have I convinced you? This is actually something, as you're thinking about it, this is something I encountered in China that I found very surprising. Kevin's saying bread. All right, I'm winning people over to the bread side. I was in Beijing, I was taking Chinese classes, and one of my teachers said, hey, I want to get married, but I can't get married until I have a house and a car. And like own the house and the car, not like mortgage and leases and all that sort of stuff. Like own a house and a car. I was like, what? That's crazy, Like I'd be like, I'd be a very old man, before I have a house and a car to my name. And this is very common in China. It's very common to get yourself in a position where you don't have massive debt before you can get married. And it puts a lot of pressure on particularly young men. It's very gendered. When I heard this, I thought it was so unromantic, right? It's like, it's basically the same sort of scene, right? It's marrying for stability, marrying for comfort and wealth. And there's something that seemed wrong about it. But at the same time, particularly when it comes down to eating, I feel like there's something kind of understandable about it. And it makes me wonder, where does our romantic feeling about love come from? What about anybody else? Bread or love? Nobody's voting. It's just me and Kevin saying bread. I know there are romantics out there who are going to say love. Maybe you're embarrassed to start the love train. In our last class, or the last section, I had one of your classmates say, you can find ways to eat, but you cannot learn to love somebody. I thought that was very romantic, right? There's some truth to that. If she married this kind of old goat over here, she would never love him, right? She'd have food in her stomach, but she'd be unhappy spending time with him, right? It would not be a fulfilling life for her. And of course, this is what Tevye saw, and he, let her follow her heart. Thank you, Joel. Thank you for saying love. I appreciate that. All right. Okay, any last thoughts or questions about this? We still have 10 minutes left in class, right? 2:50 is when we finish. Good. So let's spend the last 10 minutes on Hinduism. Hey, so we're kind of switching gears now. It might feel like a big shift Like, whoa, 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 we're doing love and Judaism and traditional and modern, and now we're going to Hinduism. What's the deal? But a lot of the themes are going to be the same. We're going to think about the social aspects of religion and society in Hindu culture. We're going to talk about the caste system. Have you guys heard of that before? CASTE. Have you heard of that before, Kevin? Yeah, exactly. It's like the social class system, right? There are high class, middle class, low class people. And it's a special word, caste. And it's kind of an uncomfortable subject, right? Because it's talking about hierarchies in society. And, you know, we can look at India and say, look at their caste system. Isn't that messed up? But one thing we're also going to do is point it back at America, which is even more uncomfortable. But it's something that I think is important to do. And we're going to read a book called Caste by a woman named Isabel Wilkerson. We'll read that next week, I think. So before we get there, though, we're going to do Hinduism, look at social structures in Hinduism, and then we'll come back to America and think about what are the social structures in America. So it'll be a good time, or an interesting time at the very least. So let's start with this map. We'll just talk about some general stuff for 10 minutes, and then we'll call it a day. So we've got this map. It's a very basic map. There's not like a lot of information on it, but there's this one blue line that's very kind of thickly drawn. Can you tell what this blue line is? It's like a river. That's right. Yeah. So we've got a river here. You can imagine these are the Himalayan mountains, right? These are some of the biggest mountains in the world. It starts up in the mountains and then kind of makes its way down to the sea. It's actually in modern day Pakistan. If you can see, these are the borders. But in the old days, Pakistan, you know, wasn't a thing, right? There weren't countries really. This was all just kind of South Asia. It was all part of a very similar cultural world for a long time, with obviously some differences. And we've got this river. Does anybody know the name of this river? There are a few famous rivers in India. This is probably the second most famous. What is the most famous river in India? Yes, very good. So the Ganges River is a very famous one, but not this river. So there's another river. It's the one that we're talking about here. This is the Indus River. Indus. And so why do we start with this river? Well, one reason is from the northeast, right? We have these big mountains. Those are very hard to cross. Would you agree with me? Mount Everest and all that sort of stuff. Not a lot of people are coming from that side, right? These are like lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, no, they're really tigers and probably lions, but maybe no bears. I don't know. But jungles, and this is very difficult to cross over too. So this whole side is really hard to get in. This side is pretty open. And so people would get to this river and they say, hey, what's on the other side of this river? And then people say, oh, those are the Indian people. So this is where the name of India comes from. You've got the Sindhu is the name of that river in Sanskrit, the Indian language, all the Indian language. Hindu is a Persian word. Indus is a Greek word. Indus is a Latin word. India is an English word. And you can see too, the name for this religion comes from this river. So when we think, what is Hinduism? It's the religion of the people who live here, which is not a great definition, is it? Kind of a terrible one. It's a problem. When you think about what is Christianity, it's the teachings of Christ, right? It's like right there in the name, maybe the religion built around Christ. Will you guys agree with me? It's a pretty good definition, isn't it? Buddhism, what's Buddhism? Religion of the Buddha, everything built around him. Well, we'll get to Buddhism. Don't worry. I don't expect you to know a ton about Buddhism. We'll learn more about Buddhism in this class too. If you think about Islam, Prophet Muhammad, his teachings, things built around him, right? There's the scriptures. We've already talked about that. You can't do that with Hinduism. There's not a founder of Hinduism. They're important people, of course, but this is one of the religions that kind of go like way back. There's not like one guy who said, everybody follow me. I'm going to give you some teachings, right? That didn't happen for Hinduism. So it makes it a little bit different than Buddhism. And in fact, Buddhism develops in India, right? So Buddhism starts within this kind of Hindu background. So where does Hinduism begin? It's really hard to say. It's just like something like Judaism too, right? Judaism's a very old tradition. You could point to somebody like Abraham and Moses and these figures from the very early history of Judaism, but Hinduism is even more kind of difficult to wrap your head around than that. So it's not a great term in a way, right? It's a very imprecise term. Again, a lot of it comes back to this river, the name of India, and it's just the religion of the people who are in India. So again, we're going to talk about social parts of Hinduism. We're going to read the Ramayana, right? The Ramayana. I'm asking you to buy that. So we will analyze the caste system within that story. We'll also look at some of these other things, like how do you live your life? Why do you do the things that you do? And you don't have to, write all this down right now, but we'll cover all of this over the next few weeks. We're going to talk about gods. A big part of Hinduism is they have lots of gods, a very diverse, very interesting pantheon. Drissa says no. I forget what I was even asking him a moment ago. So if you have a question, I'm happy to talk, Drissa. Lots of different gods. And then finally, we'll talk about rituals. So reciting scriptures. Remember, we talked about scriptures. Next class, is it next class? Yeah, next class, we'll start reading one of the scriptures. It's called the Rig Veda. So that is on the schedule already. There's offerings to gods and remembering the ancestors, just like in the dream we saw with Tevye, right? Remembering these ancestors from the past and how the ancestors might have some bearing or influence on the present. All of this shows up in Hinduism. So it's a big collection of lots of different things. What we read for today, and we'll pick up with next time, is this book called The Hindus, which is a nice kind of general introduction to Hinduism. It's by an author named Wendy Doniger, very famous, very celebrated author, translator, scholar of Hinduism. She is at the University of Chicago, and we'll read her translation of Hindu scriptures for next time. That'll be maybe a little bit difficult. It's not too long. It's only a total of 15 pages or something like that. But it'll be hard to understand everything. So give yourself some time to go through that. And so what we'll find is it's this diverse set of interrelated religious traditions. And we're going to kind of dig through it, figure out these social systems, and again, try to relate it back to our own lives. So that's the plan. We still have a few minutes left, but why don't we just call it a day? Somebody's calling me. It's probably a scam. I'm not going to answer that. So yeah, why don't we call it a day? Does anybody have any questions you want to talk about before we pull the plug? Let's stop the recording.